And you're on PM Express tonight. It's a conversation that you've heard about, but it's also about a conversation that many Ghanaians are going to be participating in. The Electoral Commission, the limited registration, and all the things that you've heard about the Commission in the last few days. It is the NDC and the EC. There is a marriage that is sometimes made in heaven, but sometimes people say it's made in hell as well. It's a very interesting relationship that we'll explore. There's been several things said about the Electoral Commission and about the NDC also in terms of that relationship going back and forth. But there are real fundamental core issues that remain unresolved. And that is why we are having a conversation today with the General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress, who is just coming from a very intense meeting over vigilantism just yesterday at the Pedrassil Valley Resort. And towards the end, we'll also explore the progress they've made so far and the NDC's resolve to push through a few of the amendments and recommendations that we understand. Many of them were upheld yesterday. We'll look at that too. But substantively, we'll look at their relationship with the Electoral Commission and the issues that they have raised in the last few days. General, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Asiedu Nketia is my guest tonight on PM Express. Mr. Nketia, so let's start with the general question. And there are many people on the back of comments by your leader and the flag bearer that the questioning neutrality of the EC. I've said you seem simply not to trust the work of the Electoral Commission. Are people right to believe that?
Well,
that you have something against the Commission?
No, I think that we don't have anything against the Commission per se as an institution or against the personalities involved. We have everything against the way they are conducting their business. So that should be the difference. And I guess you started by saying that our flag bearer has indicated that there is lack of trust between us and the Commission. I think if we want to put it well, we are saying that Electoral Commission is not positioning itself in a trustworthy manner. So it is very difficult for us to trust them. So the lack of trust is not emanating from our side. It is emanating from the way they have conducted themselves
what have they
so
done?
far. Well, I'm yet to see any referee of any football match who proceeds by condemning one team before he now takes over the officiating.
They have done that?
They've done that. The deputy commissioner, the deputy chairperson of the commission.
I'm sure you're referring to Dr. Bosman.
Dr. Bosman is on record, and we have all the tapes of having said that the National Democratic Congress is a threat to the democracy of this country.
He said that while he's deputy chair or in his private practice?
While he's deputy, in fact, during the course of debating this voter registration.
The NDC is a threat to...
A threat to the democracy of Ghana.
I haven't heard that. For my listeners who haven't heard that, where did he say this?
Well, he said it on City FM.
Okay.
Yeah. And he actually made a categorical statement that NDC is a threat to the democracy of this country. So by that declaration, he has put himself in a position that he cannot be trusted to adjudicate over any elections in this country. And I guess the earlier he left the position, the better it will be for the peace of this country.
You're asking Dr. Bosman to leave his post as deputy chairperson of the Electoral Commission?
Sure, because he has clearly indicated that one of the teams is a threat to democracy. If NDC is a threat to democracy, everybody in this country knows that the Electoral Commission is going to be the umpire of the elections. And so if the commission or an official of the commission, a highly placed official of the commission, like a deputy chair, comes out to indicate that NDC is a threat to democracy in Ghana, then he would want to do everything to make sure that NDC does not get to power. Otherwise, we will destroy the democracy of Ghana. That is the implication of that statement.
You actually said that if the earlier he recuses or leaves,
yes,
the better it will be for the peace of this country.
Yes.
why that last statement? Because maybe many will wonder that's a scary thing to say.
No. Everybody understands that the causes of conflict in the sub-region has mostly been about dispute over electoral outcomes. And the disputes, some of them will emanate from lack of confidence in the elections administration body, some other causes. But this is clear that the umpire has placed himself in a compromising situation, that it is difficult for anybody from our side to have confidence in Dr. Bosman. And it is not him alone. The chairperson, it's also, managing the affairs of the commission in such a way that she is trying to take the commission away from established procedures and also established legal framework that gives the confidence of stakeholders in the
I'm sure
in the
you're
commission.
referring to the way they're approaching the district level elections
Sure.
and registration. I'll come to that because I know there's a lot there to mine.
Yeah.
But on Dr. Bosman Asare, he's just one person. He doesn't represent the commission.
But if he's there and he's one of, if you have a whole stack of grains and you have a rotten one in between, it can poison the rest of
You
the
believe
grains.
so?
In it. Yes.
You've worked with the Electoral Commission.
I believe so.
Maybe
because
even before I was born.
I'm a rural person.
Yes.
And so I know how to make palm nut soup. If you are making palm nut soup and you have only one nut that is rotten and it is inside there, it changes the taste
You
of the whole
actually
soup.
believe, after all these years, and I'm saying
Yeah.
without anybody contradicting me, that when you started engaging with politics, I possibly wasn't born, that one individual at the Electoral Commission can substantively change the outcome of an election
Yes.
in Ghana.
Yes.
That's not possible.
It is.
How?
If the person, the robustness of our system is provided by the legal framework around the electoral system. So if you act in ways as to separate your activities from the established legal framework, then it means that the robustness of the system is lost.
But this
it's
is
like,
one person's act
I
that
am
you are
saying,
alleging.
but if his actions, he's placed in a specific, this sensitive position, I want to believe that he's a commissioner in charge of operations. The deputy commissioner in charge of operations actually is in charge of the planning and execution of the elections. And so he's so sensitive, his position is so sensitive that he cannot be declaring support for or against a party before you go about planning for the elections.
But he hasn't declared support for any political
I
party.
say against,
Okay.
because he has declared that we are, when I say we in NDC are a threat to the
For
democracy
the avoidance of doubt,
this
because
country.
I have
the
what he said.
recording, yes.
You have the recording?
Yes, we
what
have,
do you
we have
intend
taken
to
the
do with it?
recording. Well, this is one of the things we intend to do with it. If you want to play it back, we can let our research team maybe
We'll definitely
give
take
you
that
access
recording
so
because
that you
for
can
evidence
also
sake.
play. Yes.
But if he doesn't resign, what does NDC do?
It's not about NDC. It's about Ghanaians, whether Ghanaians will have confidence that any pronouncement coming from the Electoral Commission will be upheld.
But you keep on using the Electoral Commission. But he's not the Electoral Commission.
Electoral Commission, well, if I sit here today and I say that, we are going to do this in NDC, can somebody just get up and say that, oh, he's only the General Secretary, it's one person in
Somebody
the
can
Electoral
say
Commission?
that.
No.
Asiedu Nketia can never take a decision that will be binding on a party like the NDC. There's a chairman, there's a functional executive committee, there is the national executive committee, there's a NEC.
There are 3 key persons in charge of running the affairs of the commission. And their positions are like administrative commissioners, executive commissioners. There are 3. The others are just commission members. And the 3 are the chairperson and the 2 deputies. this deputy we are talking about is in charge of operations. By that I mean in charge of planning and executing the elections. So when it comes to planning for elections and executing recruitment, everything about election is directly under him. So if he says that one party is a threat to democracy before he proceeds to umpire an election, I think that if we were in any a better democracy, he will require nobody to tell him to pack and go home.
Is the NDC going to formalize this request for him to step aside?
Well,
are you going to write something? Are you going to formally complain?
When we reach there, I have.
You started. You put it in the public domain now.
I've put it in the public domain now. It is not about NDC alone. There are other actors whose interests are also affected. We are 30 million Ghanaians, so other actors can take other actions. But for the time being, I am saying that the pronouncement he has made has compromised his neutrality. So if our flag bearer makes that statement, it is based on reality of this.
There's something else I know you're very concerned about, which is the limited registration.
Sure.
You actually hinted just now that some laws, legislation are being breached.
Yeah.
Explain.
Thank you very much. Every election starts with registration. And indeed, anybody who has done studies about elections and so on recognize that the most important preparation that one has to do before going into election is to know the number of people who are going to cast their vote. It's very, very fundamental. You have to know that one before all the other preparations take place. I mean, if you are printing ballot papers, you should know the number of people who are qualified to vote before you print that number of ballot papers. If you are opening polling centers, you should know where the number of people who are to vote, where they are located, and how to, create your polling stations and so on. And all the other activities are based on the voters' register. And so that is why voter registration has raised a lot of controversies, both in the past and it's still raising these controversies. And so we all know that in the past, we were compiling this voter register, not using the biometric technology, and with the attendant controversies, until we came to a point where we felt that, look, let us apply biometric technology so that we will eliminate the possibility of multiple voting completely out. Because of the possibility of multiple voting, we have had to replace the voters' register completely every 10 years. And I believe you understand why. Because registration is about people's ages. Yeah. And so even as we started this interview, we have all aged. Yes. By the time we finish this interview, we would have added maybe 1 hour to our ages. Yes. So it is a continuous process. Yes. And so if there is a law that says that people 18 years and above are entitled to be captured, it is very, very difficult to capture everybody in one day. But if it takes more than 1 day, some people turn 18. So if you have registered in their areas already, then you have people who are 18 but whose names cannot be in the register. The same way, people are dying. So there can be people who walk to the registration center. After completion of the registration processes, they may not reach their houses and they will die. So their name will remain in the register. So that is how come we always maintain that there is no register without ghost names. At whatever point you compile a register, by the end of the registration, you already have ghost names in. But we're able to tolerate the ghost names over a certain period because they begin accumulating. Yeah. And in Ghana, we've realized that for over a period of 10 years, the register would have accumulated a certain quantum of ghost names that if anybody is able to utilize them to do multiple voting, they can affect the outcomes of elections. And so that has been the reason why every 10 years we're revising the voters' register until we adopted, and again, the revision follows population census because the actual census takes place at 10-year intervals. In between the census, the rest are projections. Yeah. Okay. So when you are able to replace the register after 10 years and you begin a new register, it means that you've done away with all the people who died and whose names were being accumulated in the register. And so you begin a new accumulation. Okay. So you have lessened the possibility of anybody utilizing existing names to do multiple voting. Yeah. So when we migrated to the biometric register, the problem of multiple voting was eradicated because anybody who dies and whose name remains in the register cannot vote again, and nobody can use the thumbprint of a dead person to be able to engage in multiple voting. So the intention of introducing the biometric register was to create a permanent register, yeah, so that from time to time we'll be capturing other names and be adding. Okay. So that was what we did in 2012. And I'm happy to note that after the 2012 registration, the register has been subjected to the best scrutiny anybody can think about, including court processes that ordered the deletion of names of registrants who used the health insurance card as a breeder document and so on. So any observer in this country who is making an honest observation will be able to come to the conclusion that the voters' register in this country is the most credible compilation of Ghanaians ever in any single document. And so from 2012, we have been doing limited registration exercises so that within 2-year intervals, we will be capturing and adding the names of new persons who have come of age. And before we do that, because Electoral Commission is not an authoritative body that can pronounce on population figures, you need to go to the government institution that is in charge of population. So whatever figure the statistical service will provide, that can be the authoritative figure for the population. And before we embark on any such exercise, you go take that figure first. So you have an idea as to the number of people you are planning to capture. Yeah. So it is based on that data that you design your registration centers, you begin your procurement, and everything is based on that basic data. We did that in 2014, the first limited registration after the biometric register. Did that in 2014. Statistical Service provided 1 million as the figure for people who have entered the 18-year bracket. We undertook the exercise with careful planning. We were able to capture about 89%. Okay. Then in 2016, we did another limited registration exercise. Before the exercise, the Electoral Commission took figures from Statistical Service, and this time around, they indicated that the people who qualify, our population is a pyramid. Yeah. So we have a very young population. So each time new people enter the 18-year bracket, There are more than those who entered last year.
Yeah.
So when we took the figures in 2016, it was 1.2 million.
Okay.
We proceeded, we were able to register close to 1.1 million. And an interesting thing was that we were working with Jim Mensah at IEA, you know, the NGO. At that time, she issued a statement that the 100,000 that remained unregistered, the Electoral Commission should extend the period of registration by 2 weeks more so that the 100,000 can be captured, because 100,000 is a significant population whose rights cannot be trampled upon. It's on record there. Now, we came to 2019, and you are going to do limited registration. We ask you, go take the data first before we plan. And in fact, it actually began from the processes leading to the referendum, okay, for the creation of the regions. They waited till the time remaining for the referendum was so limited. And so they just decided that, well, let us begin the processes of registration. We will limit the registration to only 46 districts, i.e. those districts where who will be participating in the referendum. So that after that one, we can get time to do the rest. And as if by design, the day they were going to take decisions as to the mode of the registration, they gave us very late, when I say as NDC, gave a very late invitation.
To an IPAC meeting?
To an IPAC meeting. 46 minutes to the commencement of the meeting. When all other persons or other stakeholders have had their notices and they were gathered there, they were calling us. I said, how do you stampede us into such a meeting, the agenda of which is so fundamental to the democratic process of this country? They ignored us, they took their decisions, and when we complained, they came out to apologize. After that apology, we said that, well, if you know you have done something wrong, annul that meeting and its outcomes, and call another one within these 3 days, and let us all go and discuss the issues. They said, no, we were wrong in not inviting you, but once the decisions have been taken, we are going ahead with them. I said, okay. This is not fatal to our interests, because the referendum is about creation of regions which every party supports anyway. But we hope that after this registration exercise, we will have time to now do things properly. And we warn them that, look, that was the first time in this country that we're doing registration at the district offices of Electoral Commission, mass registration at district offices of Electoral Commission. Because we had installed equipment at the district offices, those they refer to as online equipment. Yeah. But their intention was not for mass registration. It was for a separate one-off registration thing, following an order from a high court that the Constitution, according to Article 42, requires that any Ghanaian who is 18 years and above is entitled to vote, and the Electoral Commission must register them so that they will vote. So somebody took the issue to court that they don't understand that the registration of voters is not continuous. And that the Electoral Commission opens registration period, and during that period, whether you are in Ghana or not, when it closes, then you will lose the opportunity to register. So there must be facilities to be able to capture the names of people on continuous basis. Those people who are unavailable during the mass registration exercise. It was based upon that court ruling that the nation procured this online equipment for the district, so that anybody who walks to a district office of the Electoral Commission can have his or her name registered.
So they've chosen to use that?
And that name will not be screened by any party agent. It goes straight into the database. Okay. So after the equipment had been installed, we said, now, we need to develop new protocols around this thing, because it is dangerous to allow registration which will not be observed by any stakeholder. So checks and balances are the mechanisms that we use in democracy to ensure integrity, ensure transparency, and so on. So where would the checks be when the political parties cannot field agents permanently at the Electoral Commission district offices? And when we don't know when anybody will walk into the offices to want to register, so that we will be notified to bring agents. So we spend a good part of the last half of 2016 trying to design regulations and protocols around this to ensure that we maintain transparency, so that nobody uses that equipment to compromise the data we have already gathered in our database. By the time we came to the close of this, and I'm not sure we're able to even register people with that equipment. Okay, so it was there. Then suddenly, Electoral Commission decided that they were going to deploy that equipment for mass registration.
Which is the one that is forthcoming?
Yes. The very first one, the 46 districts.
The referendum.
So that was the first time they wanted to, they deployed it. And when they were going to deploy it, we cautioned them.
But eventually you said, I mean...
Listen, we cautioned them and said that, look, this will create a problem. So let us work around it. Let us do something else and so on. Meanwhile, around that time, they had gone to Parliament to request for budgetary appropriation to be able to service the regular offline equipment that can be deployed everywhere in this country, including polling stations, electoral areas. The servicing period has come up, and so the suppliers requested for funding to be able to do the servicing, which funding has been sourced by the Commission from Parliament. Parliament had approved, the Minister of Finance had released monies, but they chose to keep those monies and then to go and resort to the use of this equipment, which is not designed for mass registration.
But because of time, I know your main concern is the limited registration that is about to happen.
Yes.
How does the recounting of the process link to this?
Because when they used this online equipment, the result was disastrous. They intended to register 100,000 people
for the referendum. For
the referendum in the 46 districts. We warned them that it wasn't possible they will reach their target, because you want everybody to move from their villages to district center, where the equipment is stationed. It cannot be moved, and so it is not possible. But they didn't agree with that. When they went into it, they got 47,000 registered, equivalent of 47% of the 100,000. So the result was very clear. So in the subsequent IPAC meeting, we said that, look, you have failed, because any exercise which will generate 47%, when previous exercises were generating 90%, 89%, 85%, and so on. So there is a clear indication that the method you use was not suitable. So they agreed and said that, well, they are going to, refurbish the existing equipment. So because of that, they craved the indulgence of the political parties to accept a postponement of the second phase of the registration, so that they will combine it with a wholesale registration in 2019, by which time they would have refurbished all the equipment that will be deployed at the electoral areas. And so we agreed. All the minutes of those meetings are there. So we agreed that they have seen that they've done something wrong, which they were going to correct. Now you went to Parliament, got the appropriations made, monies provided for the servicing of all about 7,000 plus equipment, or I think 8,000 or so equipment. You never took any step to service those equipment. Then you waited, and then now came to announce that you were going to do limited registration 2019. But you will be using the same equipment that could not conduct the earlier 46 districts, now for the whole country. That is where our issue is. And we said that, look, let us see your program. They brought their program, and there were several flaws with the program.
Okay, we're going to interrogate the program shortly, because that's where a lot of, and the Electoral Commission had come up with their own explanation for this. When we return from this short break, we'll get Asiedu Nketia to expand on the issues with the program that they have, and then we'll also interrogate the NDC's position based on what we've heard the Electoral Commission say. And then we'll end by looking at what they agreed from the Vigilantism meeting yesterday. Stay with us. Okay. You're still live on PM Express. I am with Asiedu Nketia. He is the General Secretary of the National Democratic Congress. And we're interrogating the forthcoming limited registration exercise. The NDC have raised several concerns. You heard him already raise a few of them already. Mr. Nketia, so the Electoral Commission explained recently, when they paid a courtesy call on us, that the real reason why they have to do this is cost. And that when they interrogated how much it was going to cost them to indeed do the refurbishment and roll out nationwide for limited registration, it was too expensive. 56 million, I think he says. And that when they asked the consultant to do an assessment of what it will cost to purchase fresh, more advanced, more mobile networks, for the registration proper for next year's election, it was 20 million less. And so for them, it didn't make sense to invest 50 plus million to do limited registration when you could do away with this current infrastructure we have with the vendor and go in for all new, most current, most up-to-date equipment for a major registration exercise for the 2020 elections, which really should be your most concern. That is the Electoral Commission's explanation, that 20 million is at stake here, and they're saving the taxpayers' purse, because there's going to be a nationwide registration anyway.
There's no need to repeat the
You've heard
question.
You've heard it.
I've
Yeah.
heard it. So
what is your rebuttal to that?
Yes, I'll come to that, but
Okay.
just 2 minutes.
No problem.
The program that has been announced, we realized that there were serious flaws with that program. First of all, it was not implementable within the time frame that they sought to implement it. And we pointed it out to them. They wouldn't have any thing about that. We told them that when you take the CI, it gives certain time allocations for certain things to be done. And particularly in the recruitment of officers, there is a requirement that after interviews have been conducted, the list of persons they propose to recruit must be available for inspection by political parties in their district offices for 2 weeks.
Has that been done?
It has not been done. All we hear is that those officers are being trained already. So a very important transparency mechanism to ensure that you don't recruit party secretaries or people who have partisan views to pretend to be the neutral registration officers for this particular
Has the Electoral
exercise.
Commission always complied with this directive in the past?
Yes, they've done so.
Even
and we
for
have
limited registration exercise?
Yes, they've done so in the past, and people have raised issues, and those issues have been addressed. So that is a mechanism to build confidence
in
the electoral process. This thing has not been done. We hear the officers, some of them are undergoing training already when nobody had vetted their backgrounds. That is a breach of the confidence mechanisms and the breach of the law. Number two, we also indicated that you needed to inform the political parties and everybody concerned by Gazette notification the areas you want to designate as registration centers.
You don't have that?
It had not been done as at the last time we were doing the meeting. And the thing about it is that you have to do this 21 days before registration commences. The day we're holding the IPAC meeting, we were left with exactly 21 days to June 7th when the registration.
How many provided that detail yet?
Come again.
How many provided the details you're requesting yet?
I'm saying no.
They haven't?
They haven't. So at that time, we said that, well, you need today, by close of day today.
Provided.
You should have done the gazetting. Otherwise, the registration cannot happen on the 7th. And they said that, oh, our officers are already at the assembly press doing the gazetting. Then in the course of the discussion, when we're trying to solve the problem of access to registration centers and we're trying to figure out means of getting people to register, if it happens that it cannot go, the registration cannot take place at electoral area centers. Then there was a suggestion that, oh, well, they now accepted that access will be a problem. So they would want us to clean some of the machines, though they claim to be obsolete. They want to clean some of them and then open other centers to deploy those other machines there. We asked them, how many machines do you think you can deploy? They didn't have any idea. How many difficult areas are you going to designate as centers? They said they were now going to undertake that exercise. So the question is, if the gazetting is happening now for the 7th of June.
Has it happened?
For the 7th of June. And you are also now going to identify other centers. How is the Gazette going to carry all the centers? So it means that if it is true that you were in the process of gazetting on that day, then it means that that Gazette will not cover the other stations you are creating, which is a breach of the law. If it is not true that you were in the process of gazetting, then you are already in breach of the law, and that the elections can therefore not happen on the 7th. They brush over this thing, say we have argued too much, so we left the place. Now coming to the issue, fundamental issue that is being raised. This issue was raised, and I'm hearing the figure of 56 million for the first time ever in my life.
Have you heard the 20 million savings?
Yes, they mentioned the 20 million savings. It was based upon the mentioning of the 20 million that I said I sought to find out which new system is she going to acquire and what is the cost of that new system as compared to the money that will be required to refurbish.
Yeah.
And she said that we were not entitled to that information.
Are you entitled to it?
Why not? Are you entitled to it?
As a citizen?
Yes, so yes. I am not a citizen of Ghana. So I said, let us have those figures so we are able to either agree or disagree with you about this quantum of savings you are talking about.
You can't take the EC's word.
And she said, we are not entitled. The words came out and it is also on record. Luckily, the tape that surfaced about it was contained in it that the Electoral Commission does not owe anybody the explanation about their finances. And that was where I sought to push her that, look, we are citizens of this country. Even if I'm not the General Secretary of the party, I'm a tax-paying citizen. And you are not occupying your private NGO any longer. You are now a public official occupying the position of an arbiter to elections. So you owe us every obligation to explain these things. That was where the altercation started, and she sought to say, I'm not respecting, and so on and so on. So those figures were never released.
Yeah, but
they proceeded to say, she proceeded to insist that they are going to make savings of 20 million. And we said that when we asked you whether you were going to acquire new technology, you said yes. And we said, how come you took a decision to acquire new technology without the collaboration of all the stakeholders? And you say, oh, you haven't acquired it yet, and that
it's an intention.
It's an intention. Then we said that if it is an intention to acquire something, you haven't determined the specifications, and procurement authority has not established the actual cost. So on what basis are you talking about 20 million savings?
They had an expert. They had an expert that they hired.
Which expert?
The same expert that Afarijan used when we were going biometric.
When Afarijan was using those experts, they didn't use the expert alone. They asked every political party to send their own expert. We sent Dr. Kwenu. MPP sent another expert. And
but because you're making an initial, you're making a huge switch in the electoral process.
Please. That is also making another switch, because technology about elections is something that you shouldn't take for granted. If you want confidence to be built in an electoral process, the processes towards acquisition of technology and all things must be so transparent, and people should be able to query the system, ask the relevant questions about the security measures that are in place and so on. It is on the basis of answers provided to those questions that we can then go and convince our support base that, look, Electoral Commission alone cannot do this and do that and do that, so let's have confidence. So they never involve anybody. And they didn't even want to admit that they are procuring a new system. Because
but they said already
if you are procuring a new system, and we said that you are procuring a new system without the involvement of stakeholders, then they changed their response to say that they are not procuring yet. If you are not procuring yet, how did you determine the cost and compare it with the cost of refurbishment?
Last week, the EC's chairperson was clear that it's a reason they are going to procure.
I'm saying that so they couldn't have settled on exact cost figures to be able to determine that they are saving 20 million in the first place. That's one, my preliminary comment. Then second, they don't let's spend more time on this. Second,
but it's important.
It's important.
Because they have an expert that did the cost analysis and said
all those experts existed,
yes.
But there was the need to involve us so we know what Electoral Commission is doing at any point in time, because it is about offering, if you like, umpireship to an election that we are all stakeholders. Yeah. So it is transparency that generates confidence in an electoral process. So if you are breaching that transparency, then there is cause for concern. But given that you are saving 20 million without even accepting, let's grant it that they are saving 20 million. Your saving of 20 million, we have demonstrated amply to them that your attempt to save your $20 million is going to have a result of denying 1.2 million Ghanaians their right to register and participate in the
because election. They can't walk the district offices, it's too far.
Because when they have declared their target for the registration without going to take any figures from statistical service.
How do you know that?
Oh, I know it because we have the figures. The statistical service figures are available. And so we have access to them. We have taken those figures. And so they first declared that they intend to register 300,000 Ghanaians. I say, how did you determine that figure? They couldn't answer. Then in a subsequent meeting 2 weeks later, they said they were going to register 500. So they've now increased from 300 to 500. And we said that, Madam, we cannot be using guesswork in doing this very important exercise because there are statutory institutions that give information about what you should be doing at any point in time. And that we have applied to statistical service. And if you check your records there, every chairperson of Electoral Commission in the past had applied to Statistical Service for that data. Why are you not applying to Statistical Service for that data so that when you are questioned, you can transparently say that I did not establish the target, but the targets were established by another reputable institution. They said we're making too much noise and we're making too many demands. So they stuck to the 500,000. Now, the Statistical Service figures are out now. And the people, Ghanaians within that age bracket, they number 1,752,000. 1,752,000 Ghanaians are eligible to be registered in this limited registration exercise. If the authority that is supposed to register them has decided on their own, without any reasonable justification, to register only 500,000, what happens to the rights of the 1.2 million Ghanaians?
Those other people you mentioned have not been stopped from walking to the district offices to register.
Please.
They can still walk there and register.
You cannot. You see, I told you that you get that figure first. Before you do your planning, if you procure 500 forms for registration, how can 1.7 million people be registered with 500 forms, with forms intended to register 500? So the 500 is their basis of planning. So their procurement, the centers they are opening, and everything is based on the 500,000. And we are saying it is wrong. So it means that the commission, in breach of the Constitution and in breach of all the laws about the establishment of the commission and all the laws that provide the rights of citizens of this country of voting age to register, you are in breach of them, and you are doing it consciously through planning. Okay, so Mr. Nketia, what you said is fundamental. You say there is a constitutional breach. Yes.
You have a recourse in law.
Well, you are also a citizen, aren't you? They didn't tell me the 56 million, but they considered you desirable to get the 56 million. So it means that you are also entitled to pursue your rights.
No
and
problem.
Those who are
I'm asking you.
I'm saying that I'm
just asking you.
What I'm doing is advocacy.
True.
I think that the advocacy will open the eyes of affected Ghanaians.
But are you beyond the advocacy? Is the party deciding to do anything else?
I am doing advocacy now. That is what I'm doing.
But I'm not asking whether beyond that you're going to do something else.
Please. I'm saying that I am
doing
advocacy. So let it
because
be
I'm surprised that in spite of this concern,
ask yourself, what are you doing as a Ghanaian?
I am providing you with a platform to speak.
And why are you not going to court?
Why should I?
And so why should I be beyond the what I have chosen to do?
Because you have, for you, it's a matter of concern that you've raised. You say it should be to me too.
It's not a matter of personal concern alone. It is a matter of national concern. So what I'm doing, look, as a good citizen, my role is that we are all placed.
But is it enough for the NDC,
the
major political party, the main opposition party, just to advocate on such a matter?
For the answers, it will help.
I'm asking a question.
I'm saying that if you can save time for the answers instead of repeating the same question.
But you're not giving an answer.
I have given you an answer that what I am doing is what I am doing.
Okay. So you won't go beyond that.
Why? If I decide to go beyond that, what law am I preaching?
I'm asking whether you will.
I am saying for now, this is what I am doing.
Okay.
So don't answer, don't prolong this thing. Now, so that is a fundamental issue. So you ask yourself, can you exchange 20 million, if it is true that they are saving 20 million, can you exchange 20 million with the rights of 1.2 million Ghanaians to vote? Is our vote for sale now? Now, if you are talking about cost saving, having to read the judgment of the court that said that Ghanaians living abroad are entitled to be registered to vote.
Yeah.
How much will it cost to go outside Ghana to register those people?
I don't know. I'm not sure you do too.
Yes, the law does not exclude Ghanaians living outside
based on cost
to vote. But the court deemed it necessary to urge the Electoral Commission to go there to vote.
Regardless of the cost.
But the court didn't know the cause in the first place.
I want to take a quick
now,
break.
Let's come
I want to
to
take a
the
quick break.
final.
We'll come out to the final. I want to take a quick break. When we return from the break, there's a fundamental concern that have also been expressed, and this will be very, very brief, which is that somehow there's a view that the Electoral Commission from the NDC, this all part of the plan to rig the elections. Is it? And is it even possible in Ghana for that to happen? And then we'll end briefly with comments on yesterday's vigilante meeting. Stay with us. You're still here on PM Express. I'm still with John Asiedu Nketia. Mr. Nketia, the Electoral Commission chairperson, when she paid a courtesy call on us, also said that we have exposed the electoral system to a foreign vendor who holds all the rights to the data. And EC itself hasn't got access to it. They determine when to go in and when to go out and when to give EC access. That's such a fundamental security breach.
That is not true.
Why do you say that?
But before we go there, let me conclude on this course. I cautioned by saying that if you consider education to be too expensive, go and try illiteracy. You will see the two, which is more expensive. If you consider peace to be too expensive, go and try war. We are talking about elections that can, the outcomes of which can generate confusion in this country. Go and ask Cote d'Ivoire. What happened? The money they had to spend and for peacekeeping and all these things. And the cost of infrastructure that was destroyed during that war. We want to take action to prevent the case where dispute about electoral outcome can degenerate into something. So 20 million shouldn't be a consideration. And I'm sure Parliament is fully aware of this. That's why Parliament approved the budget. I'm sure the finance minister knows how to do more cost cutting than Jim Mensah. The finance minister released the money based on sound judgment. Okay. Yeah, so let's go there. But let's get back to the
I'll come to the key. I'll come to the key.
Strictly
just one quick question on this last one you made. This is important for me. You made the point earlier, and I wanted to ask that, which is that the Gazette hasn't been done. Time has elapsed. They've breached the law.
I am saying that as at the time the meeting was taking place, the Gazetting has not been done.
This is my question. Will the NDC want the limited postpone to meet strictly the terms of the law?
You have asked two questions, so I'll answer the first one first. If there's more time, then I'll come.
No. Do this for me briefly, because this is important.
No.
This is important.
I'm saying that
this is important. We'll go to that.
Dates that you are establishing.
Allow me to do the interview.
I am saying you have asked me questions.
No,
look.
Answer this one for me. We'll go.
Please, if you want us to walk out of this interview, let me
answer this one for me, and then we'll go.
I'm saying that if you want us to walk out
answer
of
this question for me, and then we'll go.
On the issue of holding the key.
This is my interview.
Please. And I have told you, I am also entitled to
answer. Listen to me. When I ask the question,
you said, stop the interview?
No, we can.
Because I don't. You asked a principal question.
Yes.
And I said
and then you chose to go elsewhere. And I'm asking you a follow-up on that before we go.
2 minutes out of the 5 minutes remaining.
I will. I apportion the time. Let me apportion the time to this. This is important for me.
Please, if the most important reason why I am engaging in this meeting is to explain this data control.
This is my show and this is my interview. Okay.
Please, go and
I chose to come to you.
I am saying that.
Allow me.
We have agreed on the protocols. Please, my brother.
You have to. I have given you a lot of respect.
I'm saying that you need
to as well.
Also given you a simple question. You have asked a very important question, which I need to respond.
And I'm saying I'll give you time to do it.
No. Where is the time going to come from?
This is my time. I'll give it to you.
You have indicated that we have 5 minutes.
I'm saying I'll give you the time.
Just
answer this one for me. I'll give you the time to do it.
Go ahead.
It's a fundamental question. Quick follow-up. I'm saying that you say the breach has happened with the gazetting notification. You need to tie that end. I'm saying what should happen to cure that? Should the EC postpone the registration so we can respect the law? Or what would the NDC have the EC do? How do we cure that? It's my question. Fundamental.
I don't know. And we are not going to do anything.
Okay. Answer. So the question then comes on. You can now go on and answer the question about the EC chairperson. You can look at me. You can look at me. You can look at me.
I don't know where the camera is facing.
No, this is the camera.
You see,
this is the camera.
You see,
so you can answer that question. Yes.
One of the transparency measures that we put in place at the time we were going to procure this biometric registration was that you remember that there were concerns about stakeholders. Yeah. Some people felt that, well, the people at the commission are not trustworthy if data is not on paper and is now in computers. And then somebody has access who can go in at the blind side of the other stakeholder, it could generate problems. Yeah. So as I told you, that we were all part of the design of the system. So it was a collective decision taken at that time as a transparency measure that, look, nobody should have exclusive access to enter the system. So it's like a room where you are keeping your valuables, and we jointly own those valuables. So transparency measure, you put your padlock on the door, I put my padlock on the door. Without me, you cannot enter alone. And without you, I cannot enter alone. So we have developed protocols at the commission where the vendor alone cannot enter the data. And then the commission officials also alone cannot enter the data until certain protocols are gone through. So before the vendor will provide access for entry or deletion of names from the register, there must be documentation which the vendor can show to everybody that, well, as at the last day we met, 20 million names were there. If 5 million have been added, this is the documentation based upon which the 5 million were added. And these are verifiable by all stakeholders. So that was meant to be a transparency measure. And indeed, the supplier had always been requesting whether Electoral Commission would want to take control of the keys. Afarijan had resisted the thing before he left. Charlotte Osei came. First, he was thinking the same way, that we are a sovereign country, and so on, and so on, and so on. So he was going to make these changes. When this system was explained, he said that fantastic. So this absolved Electoral Commission officials there of any blame if anybody raised. Can you imagine what would have happened in the 2012 elections, where MPP alleged that Electoral Commission had added 300,000 names from elsewhere to the register? If the situation that existed at that time allowed Electoral Commission alone to enter there and add names, can you imagine what would have happened to this country? So this is a transparency measure.
So the EC has a key too. The EC has a key too. Just that they don't have it alone.
They don't have, the system is so designed that EC cannot enter alone, and but their presence or their approval is necessary for the vendor to enter. And the vendor also cannot enter unless instructed by the EC. So if we are talking about technology, we have been independent for so many years now. Ask yourself, why are we not printing our currency in Ghana? Because the technology doesn't exist. Look at the IT infrastructure in Ghana now. Is it so robust that we have all these securities around such an important data? Why is it that banks that are doing these ATMs are channeling some of their, routing some of their communications and hosting some of their data in South Africa or India or Russia? Okay. It tells you that it will be too great a risk. Okay. The confidence of the people in the system must be known. Okay. Must be established before you do your work. You can do all the excellent work at Electoral Commission. If people don't have confidence in the system, your work will come to naught. So what Jim Mensah is doing now the commission, on the blind side of political parties, have gone to engage another company, which is supposed to be a Ghanaian company, whose owners have political affiliations in this country, who have the right to vote. And they are going to control this key. And the worst thing is that stakeholders don't know about it. For us to even participate and query.
How do you get to know this information?
Come again.
How do you get to know
I am a general secretary of NDC.
So this company's affiliation is with which party?
No, I'm saying whatever it is, they are registered voters. Don't they vote?
Yes.
They vote. So
but you're suggesting that
I am saying they could be NDC, they could be CPP,
so that's
they
what
could
you
be
mean.
anything.
Okay.
But they have party affiliation. So if you say that the Israelis who have no party affiliation in this country, they cannot participate to ensure transparency, and you want a Ghanaian company whose level of technological capacity is far, far below what the Israelis are delivering, and you want them to have access to our data, add names they want, delete names they want, and they themselves are voters in this country. We were printing ballot papers outside this country until we developed security printing.
That allowed it to print locally.
That was how we brought the printing here in Ghana, and we developed the protocols for the printing of ballot papers together, so that in the course of the printing, everybody is a participant.
The party wants to be involved in the process, at least be transparent. That's what you're asking.
Transparency is the key for credible elections. Any point where the elections administration body decide not to be transparent, then we have cause to worry.
Asiedu Nketia, I'm grateful that you joined me.
You are welcome.
Don't worry about the heated conversation. This is Asiedu Nketia. I am not worried at all because I know it's not a conversation we're having. But at least you've heard your side of the story. Make of it what you will. This has been PM. My name is Evan Smith. Enjoy the rest of the evening.